In today's video, we're exploring one of Vancouver's hottest neighborhoods. You might be able to guess where I am based on the scenery in behind me. Not only is this the hottest neighborhood, but it's one of the best values in the city. So I'm super excited to share this neighborhood with you. I'm gonna take you boots on the ground through the entire neighborhood so you have a really strong understanding of what it's like to live here, both the pros and the cons. And by the end of this video, you'll be able to decide for yourself whether this is a neighborhood you should be targeting when you're moving to Vancouver or when you're moving within Vancouver. Let's get into all of that right now. Hey, it's Sebastian Albrecht with Living in Vancouver, BC team, and welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, this channel is all about living in and moving to Vancouver. Every single week, I put out videos just like this one about, you guessed it, moving to and living in Vancouver. And this week, we're getting deep into one of the hottest neighborhoods in Vancouver, not only one of the hottest neighborhoods, but also one of the most affordable neighborhoods in Vancouver. And that neighborhood is Hastings. Now, before I keep going, I want to point out that there are some differences in neighborhoods around Vancouver and how we name them. There is what the locals will call a neighborhood, there is what the city calls it, and then there's also what the real estate board calls it. And so the area I am in right now is actually on the western side of Hastings Sunrise, but it is, according to the real estate board, a separate neighborhood. But it's not what most of us would consider a separate neighborhood. And so Hastings, where I am right now, as I said, is, according to the real estate board, Hastings is the hottest market in Vancouver at this very moment, with nearly a 25% sales to active listing ratio, meaning 1 out of every 4 homes is selling per month. So that is a pretty extraordinary level, and that is definitely a very strong seller's market, something that we are not seeing across the board. There's only a couple of markets in the entire city that are currently in a seller's market, and this is one of them. Not only is it a very strong seller's market, but it is also one of the most affordable markets in the entire city. And so I do want to dig in deep. I'm going to take you on a tour of this neighborhood. I'm going to show you what it's like to live here, but also some of the pros and the cons of the neighborhood. And then we're going to explore what the housing market is like in this neighborhood as well, what kind of options there are. And it's affordable, not just for purchasing, but also for renting. So to give you an idea of the geography of the area, Hastings, according to the real estate board, runs, and I'm just about to get to it, Venables on the southern end. To the north, it's going to be the ocean. It's going to be the Port of Vancouver that kind of blocks us. And then on the western side, it is Clark. And then on the eastern side, it runs to Nanaimo. So it's not an enormous area. Within this zone, there's roughly 35,000 people, and it matches pretty much the demographics of Vancouver as a whole. A pretty diverse neighborhood, many different groups of people that live here, both new immigrants as well as long-standing Canadians. And in terms of age, typical age is around 40 years old. I believe that's the average age according to the last census. So it gives you an idea of the types of people that live here. And the other thing to note is that for the most part, this part of Hastings Sunrise doesn't have too many houses, and that's part of what drags the average sales price down a little bit lower. Most of what is built here is a bit higher density. You're going to find that there's typically a lot of condominiums in this neighborhood as well as townhouses, but very few detached homes. Okay, so who actually lives in a Hastings Sunrise? Well, at the moment, there's about 35,000 people that live in Hastings Sunrise, and for the most part, it is an ethnically diverse neighborhood, and it reflects essentially the makeup of the city, although I do have to say it's slightly more of an Asian population and slightly less of a European background. In terms of economics, it's also a pretty diverse neighborhood. People from all walks of life, people who have a lot of money and who have a little. I mean, keep in mind that we do border the Downtown Eastside. This is sort of the Downtown Eastside, then there's Strathcona, and then there's Hastings Sunrise moving from west to east. So there is an impact from that we're going to talk about a little bit later as well. And then in terms of age demographics, you're looking at a typical average age of about 40 years old. Historically, the makeup of Hastings Sunrise was definitely a working class neighborhood. In the not too distant past, it was an area that a lot of new immigrants to Vancouver moved, and in particular, the Italian Canadian community. So that is an enormous presence in Hastings Sunrise. It's still that today in terms of the surface level, what you see on the surface, the types of shops, the services, the restaurants, the cafes. There's still a very strong connection to that Italian Canadian past, and that working class culture that Hastings Sunrise had in the not too distant past. Today, there's a lot of young professionals that are moving into the neighborhood. They're looking for something that's more affordable and a walkable, interesting neighborhood that has a culture and history to it. We're going to get into more of that in the pros and the cons. And then there's a large artistic community that has been present in this community and perhaps is being pushed out to a certain degree as we see more and more gentrification of the neighborhood. And there's also a large new immigrant population, and this is more and more increasingly an Asian population, so a connection with countries to the east. And that is a part of the community that has been present for a very long time, a more long-standing tradition, a more long-standing history. This is being revitalized and renewed with a new wave of immigration from that part of the world as well. Today, this is a very interesting, vibrant, colorful neighborhood with people from all walks of life, reflecting very much a lot of what Vancouver has to offer and what the culture of Vancouver as well. That's very present in the Hastings Sunrise community today. Okay, so now we're going to talk about amenities, and Hastings Sunrise has some fantastic amenities that people come from all over Vancouver, and not just Vancouver, but Metro Vancouver, to really enjoy. Number one would be Hastings Street. And Hastings is sort of the cultural center of Hastings Sunrise, certainly the shopping center of Hastings Sunrise. And it has a long-standing tradition harkening back to sort of the early years of immigration to Vancouver, a very strong tie to the Italian Canadian community. And so there's a lot of these little shops and restaurants and cafes that still come from that era and still cater to that community. For a lot of people moving to this area, it's something that they really enjoy. They enjoy that quaintness, that connection to history. It brings a sense of community to the neighborhood. Great coffee shop, great butchers and Italian restaurants, something that is a very strong connection for Hastings Sunrise. And then aside from that, there's just a pretty good diversity of shopping available, great grocery stores, great places to just hang out and do your daily shopping. And that is almost always going to be found along Hastings. And it is an area, because of those restaurants, because of those cafes and the types of shops that are there, it's an area that people like to come and explore from other parts of Vancouver and Metro Vancouver. On top of that, we have where I am right now, which is New Brighton Park. And New Brighton Park, you can see, has this playground, this big grassy open area. Over my shoulder there is a outdoor pool, and it's one of Vancouver's few outdoor pools. This is an area that I come to with my own kids. It's the only real ocean access that you have in East Vancouver. So on the west side of Vancouver, you have, in Kitsilano, you have Kits Beach. Going towards Point Grey, you have Jericho and Spanish Banks and all that beach access, but it's much more rare in East Vancouver, mainly because we have this active port. And so really, you can see the trucks right up there. Those are all going to the active port. And so everything that is west of here is active port, and we don't have direct ocean access because between here and downtown Vancouver, it is just the Port of Vancouver, one of Canada's busiest ports, one of the busiest ports on the western side of North America. But right here in New Brighton, we have this long-standing history of ocean access. And in fact, it goes back to before Vancouver's founding in the 1860s. This was a popular destination for people from New Westminster. There used to be a resort here, the New Brighton Resort. People would come from New Westminster, which was BC's provincial capital, where there was a lot of money, and this is where they would summer and enjoy their summer months. And you have this beautiful backdrop here, the North Shore Mountains in behind. This is really a place that you can enjoy all year round. it is fall right now, so you're seeing the leaves starting to change color. It's a little bit crisp in the air. There's no snow up on the mountains yet. You can see some snow, some ski runs up there. That would be Grouse Mountain. Very soon, I'd say, within a month or so, we're gonna start seeing those snow cap. This is just a gorgeous place to enjoy all of that. Not only is the view amazing, and on top of sort of the fields and the grassy areas where people are picnicking and enjoying a drink with their buddies through the summer months, there's also a sandy beach just beyond here, which people also obviously enjoy. And again, this is the only sand ocean access that you have in East Vancouver. Well, that's not entirely true, but on the Downtown Eastside, there is ocean access there as well. But outside in East Vancouver, this is the only ocean and sandy beach here. And so beyond this park, beyond New Brighton, which everybody enjoys in the summer months and all year round really, we also have the PNE, which is the Pacific National Exhibition. And that is also just in behind me. Hastings Race Course is just in behind me as well, where horses are raced. And that is the Pacific Coliseum up in behind me, behind those trees. You probably can't pick it out too well, but that is where the Vancouver Canucks used to play when I was a kid. That is a place that they played, and I went to see Wayne Gretzky play in that stadium. They've long since left that stadium. They play now at Rogers Arena downtown. For a while, it was also the Vancouver Giants that played in there. These days, it's pretty much left to itself. Occasionally, there's some sort of musical act in there or some sort of sales thing that happens in there, usually during the PNE. But they are looking to basically replace that capacity, and they're building a new music venue, an outdoor venue for the PNE, which I'm pretty excited about, because as you may have picked up in other videos, my wife and I, we enjoy live music. We like going to concerts. It's going to bring in a whole new sort of type of possibility for musical acts in Vancouver. But the PNE is an exhibition that is similar to the CNE in Toronto, obviously at a smaller scale. There's playland there as well for the kids to enjoy some rides, or the kid in you to enjoy some rides. When I was a kid, my favorite thing at the PNE was the Crash Up Derby. Unfortunately, they've done away with that, but some of my fondest memories are going to the PNE, enjoying some cotton candy, maybe some mini donuts, and watching the Crash Up Derby. I can't imagine being in the Crash Up Derby now as an adult, but they were doing exactly what I did at home with my little Matchbox cars, crashing them up. That's exactly what I had in mind when I was playing with my cars. All three of these things, whether it's Hastings, New Brighton Park, or the PNE, are things that people are coming from all over Vancouver and even all over Metro Vancouver to come and enjoy. This is something, when you live in Hastings Sunrise, that you have right at your doorstep. You don't have to go far for any of that, which is pretty darn cool. All right, so I want to talk a bit about the pros of living in Hastings Sunrise, and Hastings in particular. So I have a list right here, a little handy dandy reminder for me. I can't keep everything in my head, so this is what it's gonna keep me on point. The number one is its central location. I mean, honestly, Hastings Sunrise is one of the best positioned places in all of Vancouver. It's incredibly central. If you look at it on a map, downtown Vancouver, I'm not sure if you can see it too well behind me, but it's right over there. And more often than not, you can really just walk over there or take a bike or scooter. And so it's definitely within, easy reach of anybody that lives in this neighborhood. And then there's Commercial Drive, which is just to the south of Hastings Sunrise. And these are two neighborhoods that tons of people are going to want to have a connection to and be within, being walkable to those neighborhoods, and if not walkable, within a very short drive, within a short bike ride, or just hopping onto transit. All of those are really feasible when you're living in Hastings Sunrise. And then aside from sort of what's right on the cusp of Hastings, would also be the things that are a little further afield. And so you do have the northern end of Burnaby and everything that the north of Burnaby offers along Hastings in particular. Simon Fraser University is not that far, so there's students that will live in this area, whether they're studying in downtown Vancouver or studying at Simon Fraser. Both of those areas are within easy reach. And jumping onto the highway is super easy and feasible. So we're right next to the highway, essentially. And there's so much of the city of Vancouver, because the Trans-Canada Highway, the main and really the only highway that we have cutting through the city of Vancouver, is just in the northeastern corner. And so if you live just about anywhere else in the city of Vancouver, getting to the highway is almost as hard as getting out of Metro Vancouver on the highway. So there can be parts of Vancouver, like if you're living in Marpole, for example, it might take you 45 minutes, an hour, or even longer, depending on the traffic, to get on the highway. And then from there, get out of the city, whether you're going up to Whistler or heading to the Okanagan or jumping on a ferry at a Horseshoe Bay. So central location, big pro of living in Hastings. Number two pro would be its excellent transit. And predominantly that's going to be sort of the east-west connection along Hastings. And really it's bus. When we're talking about transit in Hastings Sunrise, it is bus related. You don't have the SkyTrain, at least not like immediately within the community. It is on the edge of the community. And so you can head up Commercial Drive, and it's pretty quick to get up Commercial Drive by bus, and sort of around 12th and Commercial is where the main SkyTrain station is. That's where people in this area, if they were heading to a SkyTrain, would probably go. It'd be a little too far to head downtown, get onto the SkyTrain from there, but that's probably the best bet. And aside from public transit, you also have everything that is available all over the rest of the city, things like Uber, things like the car shares like Moto and Evo, and bike share as well. And I talked in our recent video about a new scooter share, and in fact, Hastings Sunrise is a testing point for that Lime scooter share, and I've seen it around here. It's definitely been a very popular option for people, but that is a new offering that is actually only available to people living in Hastings Sunrise. Number 3 is its relative housing affordability. Now, we can't pretend that Vancouver in general isn't an expensive city, and in relation to most other places in Canada, Hastings is still relatively expensive. But where housing is currently just the typical home in Hastings Sunrise is just over $700,000. This is one of the most affordable neighborhoods. We are going to get into more of that. And it's not just purchasing homes, it's also renting homes, where Hastings Sunrise really has this affordability that much of the rest of Vancouver and Metro Vancouver really doesn't offer. And it has that while being so close to everything, including downtown Vancouver. And then number 4 is its walkability. And Hastings Sunrise, and Hastings in particular, is definitely walkable. On the whole, Hastings Sunrise isn't the most walkable neighborhood because it includes a significant amount of single-family residential, not super dense neighborhood. And it's not the most densely populated neighborhood, but Hastings specifically is a dense neighborhood. This is where the density of Hastings Sunrise is, and you have all the shops and services along Hastings Street, and you have all the shops and services not too far away on Commercial Drive. Hastings technically begins just where that commercial end of Commercial Drive ends, at Venables, but just beyond Venables, you got tons of cool shops, restaurants, cafes, and all sorts of places to explore. And so it's that sort of that vibe, that culture that people are searching for when they move to Hastings Sunrise. One of the big things that makes Hastings Sunrise and Hastings specifically so popular is its walkability. And it's specifically the Hastings side of Hastings Sunrise, this western side of Hastings Sunrise, that is much more walkable because this is the denser part. This is where all of the apartments, all of that density is in Hastings Sunrise, if there is any, because the other side, the eastern side, which the real estate board calls Hastings Sunrise, is single family residential predominantly. There's not as much density in that area and thus not as much walkability. And that is something that people are searching for more and more. They want these more densely populated, connected neighborhoods where there's a vibrancy and where there is essentially shopping, services, everything that you need is within a walkable distance. And you don't actually find that everywhere. That is something you will find downtown in an area like Yaletown. That is something that you will find in an area like Main Street or Commercial Drive. But it's not necessarily what you might find in some other parts of Vancouver and other parts of Metro Vancouver and other suburbs. Finally, the other thing that people really enjoy about this neighborhood is its culture and its vibe. And again, that has to do, I think, with its history, the type of people that have been here for a long period of time, the culture of the neighborhood, the things that are offered in the neighborhood. So we have some really cool places to hang out, great bars, great restaurants, great cafes, and then an abundance of shopping, everything being connected and walkable. And there really is a sense in this neighborhood of connectedness, togetherness. People are friendly on the street. In fact, that's something that people really point out about Hastings Sunrise more than many other parts of Vancouver, that people are friendly. They will say hello. And just as I'm out and about and I'm filming this video, I'm connecting with people as I walk about, and they're curious what I'm doing. They're saying hello. They're chatting to me. And that's something that you don't necessarily find in other parts of Vancouver. And it is generally a criticism of Vancouver that it's not a particularly friendly area. This neighborhood is definitely one of those friendly parts that people really are drawn to. They love the culture, they love the vibe. Let's talk about the cons. We've been through the pros. There's a lot going on for Hastings and the Hastings Sunrise. Lots of reasons why this is such a popular neighborhood, but I think more importantly than why it's so good is to consider why you may not want to live here. That's the harder thing to determine if you don't really know the neighborhood, if you haven't been here before and you're thinking of moving here. Well, for one, it is the proximity to the Downtown Eastside. And so there is a fair amount of spillover, probably more than any of the other more popular neighborhoods that you're going to find throughout Vancouver, because we are essentially directly east, right along Hastings. If you're homeless, if you're drug addicted, if you're looking for, an easy fix, well, you're going to be leaving the Downtown East Side and sort of exploring other communities. And really the easiest one to get to is right where we are right now. So that has an impact. We're going to talk a little more about what that impact is, but at the very least, it might be an aesthetic one, right? It might not be something that you're comfortable with. It might not be something that you want to see day to day, people struggling, people, on the street, essentially. So you have to be comfortable with that idea if you do want to live in this neighborhood. Number two would be that higher density isn't really for you. So not everybody wants to live in a dense, walkable neighborhood. Some people really want to move to an area where things are a little spread apart, where you need to drive to get somewhere. They want to be separated to a degree. And I was just out with clients of mine that are moving here from up north, and they have no interest being in a walkable neighborhood. And that is totally up to you. So you need to be aware that Hastings and Hastings Sunrise is generally one of the more densely populated neighborhoods in the city of Vancouver, similar to a main street, similar to a commercial drive. And if that isn't really for you, then Hastings may not be for you either. Third would be related to that proximity to the Downtown East Side, and that's that crime rates are going to be higher in Hastings and Hastings Sunrise than many other parts of the city. I mean, they're not as high as the Downtown East Side, but they are impacted by that proximity. That's something that you really need to wrap your head around. Now, from my perspective, there's no real concern in this neighborhood that you're going to be mugged or robbed or, worse crimes than that. Sorry, robbed, yes. But predominantly, this is petty crime that might somebody's going to break into your car. They see your phone, your computer, a bag of gym equipment on the back seat, and they're going to smash the back window and grab it. You can't leave your expensive mountain bike locked up outside of your apartment building. That is going to get taken. This stuff, the easy pickings, are what you need to worry about. Now, having said that, I am parked just about a block away, and all my camera equipment is in there. My computer, my cell phone is in there. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. It's not like there is absolutely no law and order. And that is something that I think a lot of people that talk about crime in Vancouver that's the impression that can be given. And it's not really the reality of day-to-day life and of living in these neighborhoods. It is something you need to think about more than in other neighborhoods. You need to be smart. You need to protect yourself. I would also say, just in terms of sort of personal safety, again, being a large male, I would walk these streets, or really any streets in Vancouver at any time, and not feel that there's any personal danger to me. But there are incidents that happen, and they will be a little more prevalent in areas, and certainly a lot more prevalent in an area like the Downtown East Side, a little more prevalent in an area like Hastings and Hastings Sunrise that is adjacent to the Downtown East Side. Fourth would be traffic and congestion. And again, this is due to the proximity to downtown Vancouver and sort of the fact that in order to get from downtown to the highway, you have to cross directly through this neighborhood that we're in. The result is that the main thoroughfares can get really clogged when it's time to go to and from work, those typical commuting times. And so Hastings and Dundas in particular can get really clogged up. And just to the east of us on McGill, it's that route that people are taking to get out of the downtown core, maybe to Burnaby, but more than likely to get onto the onto the highway and head out, whether it's somewhere further into the suburbs or to North Vancouver. So congestion, similar to what I've said about the North Shore, one of the issues in this particular neighborhood is there's really only a couple ways to get east and west. With the abundance of traffic that we have, those can get clogged up really, really badly. Now, lastly, something that you really need to be a local to be aware of is the smell. And this can be a really significant issue for people that live in this neighborhood. In fact, I'm just approaching the industrial area, and the industrial area is the eastern side of the Hastings area. I can start smelling something, and that smell isn't the most desirable smell. There are meat processing plants in this area, specifically chicken and fish. And then there's a company that has been here since 1964, just to the north of me in the port area, sort of not easily accessible from where I am. But they process all sorts of a variety of products. That meat processing and the derivatives of meat processing, dealing with that is really what causes a smell that a lot of people that move into this area aren't really aware of. And you want to be aware of it if you're moving into this area. It's not that bad unless you're incredibly close to it. And right now I'm about a block away. If you're right on top of it, you will notice it on warmer days. At the height of the summer, it can get pretty intense and move a little further than what you're going to find. So depending on which way the wind blows, you might be in an area where 95% of the time you're not going to notice it at all, and 5% of the time you will notice it. And I do sort of a bonus con that I do want to mention is the fact that there is the Port of Vancouver on the northern side of Hastings, and right along the waterfront is obviously where the port is and where all the train traffic is. And there's some beautiful homes, beautiful condos with incredible views packed right in there along the waterfront. What you need to be aware of is the shunting of the trains, similar to what I discussed in the cons of living in New Westminster. The reality is when you move into these neighborhoods, they are active. There were businesses going on in these neighborhoods before people really started living in them. And in this case, it is that the industrial zone with the meat packing and processing, and then it's also the trains that you need to be aware of. Really critical to be working with a realtor who understands the neighborhood and understands the areas that you want to be aware of, and you want to go in with your eyes wide open, right? It's not, for some people, neither of these things would be an issue at all. And I should point out, there's plenty of parts of Hastings and Hastings Sunrise where neither of these two things would be an issue. But you do need to know what parts to avoid or what parts to be aware of. And again, just go in with your eyes wide open. I brought you to one of my favorite parts of Vancouver to talk about real estate, and specifically Hastings and real estate. Not only is this one of my favorite parts of Vancouver, but obviously it's one of my favorite parts of Hastings Sunrise. This is Wall Street. And if you live on Wall Street, this is the view you can look at every day. This might be the view out your bedroom window, off your patio, and it is absolutely gorgeous. A lot of people compare Wall Street to Point Grey Road. Wall Street is East Vancouver's equivalent of Point Grey Road on the west side of Vancouver. And that's because of the view and the fact that you are waterfront. The difference is that Point Grey Road is basically right on the water, and there's nothing in front of your 30, 40, $50 million house. Here, these houses are not worth that much, and primarily because they don't have direct water access, they have the Port of Vancouver in between them. You have this gorgeous view, the North Shore Mountains, downtown Vancouver, sunset views, the Lions Gate Bridge off in the distance. But what you do have as well are the trains and the shunting of the trains. And while I've been in this neighborhood, I've heard a fair amount of noise coming from here, specifically the trains and helicopters and float planes coming. That's something that you don't really have to worry about when you're on Point Grey Road. That's the difference in price. And in fact, I think another train is coming right now. So that is Wall Street and the environment here. If I was to live here, I think some of the best value is actually the condos on the other side of the street that look over top of these houses. Some of them are in phenomenal shape where the exterior has been completely replaced, and I think that they are excellent value. I love Hastings. I think it's a great place to live. So if you are convinced by all the pros one of the best values are some of these buildings, some of these older buildings that have had an immense amount of work done. Now, you're hearing firsthand one of the cons. That's the sound of a train engine, a diesel engine going by right now. But let's get more into real estate in Hastings. And like I said at the beginning of the video, this is the hottest neighborhood in the entire city of Vancouver. Nearly 1 out of every 4 homes is selling right now. And that is in the, I got to timestamp this, of course, this is in the fall of 2024. And that's pretty incredible, given that the market is pretty much a balanced market. It's not particularly hot, it's not particularly weak, but this is one of the few markets where there's actually a lot of strength. And in my view, one of the reasons that we're seeing that is because we're seeing a return to the market with 2 groups that we haven't seen a lot of in the last couple of years. For one, that is the first-time buyers, and the other are investors. And investors, both of them are realizing that we're at the tail end of this increasing cycle for interest rates, and they're on the decline. And people are looking to get into the market before things get really crazy. More and more of those groups of buyers are entering the market, and one of the areas that they're looking at is Hastings because of the value that you see here. And I'm going to talk about that value a little more in a second, but before I do, I want to point out it's not every part of Hastings Sunrise that is seeing this resurgence. Houses specifically are not, and that would be primarily because houses are more expensive. Despite the fact that they're much cheaper than just about anywhere else in the city of Vancouver, they are more expensive than the other housing options that people find. So right now, in September of 2024, a typical house in this market in Hastings is $1,749,500, while a typical house in the rest of the city is $2,637,700. So you're saving well over $1 million by buying a house in Hastings. In terms of condos, this is another big savings. You're buying a condo, a typical condo in Hastings for $554,100, while in the entire city, a typical condo is $802,200. Another incredible savings by moving or looking at the Hastings neighborhood. And then townhouses are also at a discount. You're looking at $1,182,200 here in Hastings, while it's $1,287,900 in the rest of the city. So big savings there for owning in Hastings, but it's also a savings if you're looking at renting. And so rents are, for a 1-bedroom, a typical 1-bedroom in Hastings is $2,275, while it's about $2,600 in the entire city. 2 bedrooms are $2,600, while it's $3,600 in the entire city of Vancouver. And 3 bedrooms are also cheaper. It's $4,150, while it's $4,500 in the rest of the city. So you can see whether you're buying or renting, looking at Hastings Sunrise is an affordable option. It's a place that your money is going to go further, and it's another pro of living here. It's not just the natural beauty, it's not just the culture and the vibe, it's not the history, and it's not the walkability. It's all those things in combination that make living here so attractive for so many. And I think if you're thinking of moving here, this should be a place that you will want to put on your radar to at least think about and decide. And hopefully, after watching this video, you have a pretty strong understanding of whether this is a neighborhood that you feel you'd like to live in or not. And if you're not quite there, if you haven't made that decision or you want some help making other decisions about moving to Vancouver, be sure to reach out to me because I am a real estate agent that's helped hundreds of people just like you move to Vancouver. I can help you as well. My contact information is right there on the screen. Be sure to reach out anytime and we can get that conversation started. But if you're not quite ready to make that jump and make that decision, be sure to check out all the dozens of other videos that I've made for people in your position to help you understand more about Vancouver. I put out videos just like this one about moving to and living in Vancouver every single week. This week is no exception. We've explored Hastings, but previous weeks we've gone and explored other parts of Metro Vancouver, and we've talked about all sorts of issues surrounding your move to Vancouver that I think you're really going to want to explore. There are a couple of videos I want you to check out if you are thinking of moving here and you are thinking of buying. This video right here is all about buying a condo in Vancouver, and then this video right here is all about buying a townhouse. Definitely check out those videos, but I do appreciate you checking out this video and sticking with me all the way to the end. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you on next week's video as well.